Hello, what we're going to be doing in this video is I will be going through the Lab app event count. And basically why I'm creating another video is I'm going to show you how you can do this assignment using Xcode 11 versus Xcode 10. So like I mentioned in class on Tuesday night, a new delegate has been added, a scene delegate. So what we want to do is we want to keep track of the scene event count versus the app event count. So we're going to move all of the code that they have specified here into our scene delegate instead of the app delegate. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a new Xcode project, and it'll be a single view project, and what I am going to call it is scene event count. And the one thing you want to make sure is that you have storyboard selected for your user interface. So I will click on next and I will go ahead and save it. Okay, so I've created the my single event count, my single view controller app. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go to our main storyboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my view, and then I will change the background color of my view. So let me just go ahead and change the background color to System Teal. The other thing I want to do is I want to use an iPhone 8. So let me go ahead and select my iPhone 8 view down below, and then for the simulator I want to do the same thing, so I have my handy dandy home button. So we've gone ahead, we've updated the color of our view. So what we need to do is we need to add 6 labels. So I will go ahead and press on my object library button and drop in the first label. And after I drop that in, there's 2 things I want to change. I want to center the text in that label, and I want to change lines to 0. And basically what line 0 means is that the text will wrap within the label. So I've created the first label, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it 5 times. So I'll do a Control-C and add a Control-V. Another Control-V, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, and that's 6. So after we've added these labels, the easiest way to constrain them is to actually embed them in a stacked view. So I'll just go ahead and left click and then select all of my labels, and then down below I'll click on the Embed In button, and what we want to do is we want to embed those in a stack view. So they've selected vertical since my defaulted to vertical since my labels were laid out vertically, but what I want to do is I want to change my alignment to fill. And the next thing I want to do is let's go back. Make sure I have my stack view selected, and I want to update the spacing to 15 instead of 34. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure my stack view is selected, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple constraints to it. So I'll select my Add New Constraints button, and I want to constrain it to the leading and trailing edges of the screen. And I'm just going to enter 10 for constraint on my leading edge and 10 on my trailing edge. I'll add those 2 constraints. And the last thing I'm going to do to eliminate the error is I will go ahead and align it. And what I want to do is I want to align it vertically in the container. So I'll go ahead and add that constraint. And it looks like everything is looking great now. So I've eliminated the little red error that was up above, so I don't have any problems with my constraints. So this is all we're going to add to our UI. So the next thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and add 6 separate outlets. So what we're going to do here is I want to go ahead and open up my assistant editor. So the easiest way to do that, I found that out, is just I'll make sure I have my view selected or view controller selected. I'll go ahead in my editor and I will select assistant. So what it's done is it's opened up my code for my view controller. So now I can go ahead and add my outlets to each one of my labels. So I am just going to drag over from my panel, my document view, to make sure I have each label selected. So I'll go ahead and add the first one in. It'll be a UI label type, and the name of it will connect label, and I'll go ahead and click on count, and then let me add some white space in there. So I'll select my second label, do a control drag over, and what this will be called is will resign active label, and I will click connect. And I'll click on my next label and control drag over, and what that will be is did enter background label, and click on connect. And then we'll click on the next label, control drag over, and what I'm going to do is it will be a will enter foreground, label, and I will click on connect. And then the next one, I need to make sure I have the control key, not the shift key selected. And what I need to do is I need to call this did become active label. I will connect that. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and control drag over for our last label. And what I'm going to call that is did disconnect label. So we'll go ahead and connect that. So I have all of my labels connected. So the next thing I need to do is I need to create variables that will keep track of the count for when each one of these functions are called. So we're going to have a var will connect count equals to 0, a var resign active count equals to 0. We'll have a var enter background count equals to 0. We'll have a var enter foreground count equals to 0. A var did become active count equals to 0. And a var did disconnect count equals to 0. So we have our 6 counters. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and add a update view function. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, and then once I've added the function, I'll go ahead and talk about the code within the function. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the code. So I've added a function called update view, and all we're actually doing in that function, let me go ahead and close these down here a little bit so it's a little easier to see. So what we're doing in this function is we are going to just display the count for when the scene has connected, when the scene will resign active, when the scene did enter background, and I have a little misspelling there, so go ahead and update that to scene. when the scene will enter foreground, when the scene did become active, and when the scene disconnect. So what we need to do next is we actually need to go into our scene delegate and add the code that will keep track of how many times each one of those functions are called for our specific scene. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a Command S to save my view controller. And what I will be doing is I will go ahead and create part 2 of the video where we're going to add the necessary code in our scene delegate to keep track of the counts when each one of the functions are being called. So we will talk to you in a little bit.